Welcome everybody to the live stream. There we go. That's enough podcast intro for now. We are here. How is everybody doing on Twitch, YouTube, and Instagram land? Actually, because of the delay, we're just getting to Instagram. Trying about a couple different things on the stream today. We're trying to get as many of our new viewers and those who have been tuning in weekly to our latest streams, a bit more of a better experience getting into this Twitch stuff. As you will notice, I am now joined today by the man, the myth, the legend, who we're all wondering what he's drinking, Mr. Adam Bentley of Archeco. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing quite well, especially since I'm drinking bubbly sparkling water.
I feel like I was just watching who was, I think it was Silverstein or one of, it was some band that they were all drinking bubblies from like 4 different parts of the world. Yeah. Like totally not scripted at all. So
I actually like that new album. There's a lot to talk about. I like that album a lot though.
That's sick. So real quick for our audience who possibly doesn't know you or your relation to like the big words above my head, aviations and all that stuff. Adam was gracious enough to mix the final production of our latest EP, Retrospect, which was a crazy endeavor. Redoing old songs is a very mentally challenging thing, especially for a band that writes their own music, which is, I would assume, a lot of us and you in the scene. So having a third party be able to come in and like sort of take stock and say, hey, like this is good enough, now let's push it over the finish line, was like super helpful. I think there was a solid like few weeks in there somewhere where I said, hey, it's done, and you were like, is it I still don't have those tracks. you still mixing that thing. So I gotta credit where credit is due for pulling me out of that one. So anyway,
happy to help.
Now that people have some context for who you are for aviation stuff, do you mind sharing like a little bit about like sort of what you do, like what you're about right now? Maybe like, I don't know, a certain band you play in or any of that stuff?
Sure. I'm in a band called Archeco, and it's like this instrumental thing that's fun. We write progressive whatever, progressive rock, progressive fusion, that's been called, tunes. It's a lot of fun. And we did our first tour with you guys, like a US run, and so that's a little bit of extra history with Aviations there. That was a lot of fun, by the way.
3 years ago already. We were just realizing, like this month too, which is kind of insane.
Oh yeah, to the month, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Archeco is a really awesome band. I feel like most of you, if anyone is watching this, know who they are, but if you do not, please go watch them. And not just because I edited all their most recent music videos, but because all the music is really sick.
That's why
exclusively. Yeah, our one of my early memories is like trying to stay awake while like preparing for the shoot the next morning for actually, that was pretty much like every shoot, honestly. I remember staying with you and Joey was like asleep on the floor and we were trying to like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, just be like, hey, buddy.
Your ass off the next day and you're like, oh, you're sleeping on the floor, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, in addition to that stuff, like, we have a bit more history as far as like Berkeley goes. We're both Berkeley children, for better or for worse. And I was thinking about this recently too. Like and correct me if I'm wrong, because this might be totally offensive. I feel like I didn't know you that well outside of like that guy from like the studio booking office.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I knew you just because Aviations, you were like talk of the town back in the glory Berkeley days, whatever you want to call them. And then we ended up being in the same program, or not down to the exact semester, but close, like the same year, I think, graduating. I forget.
Yeah, it took me a while.
So I'd see you a lot then. Yeah, I didn't get in the first time either. I didn't even get into the school the first semester I auditioned either.
Oh man, really? I didn't know that.
It's just a nice pattern happening here. But yeah, I did have that job at the office. I was like troubleshooter / schedule booking. I think that is how we actually met.
That's awesome. I meant to screen cap something recently. I was doing some Isotope Berkeley work, and I saw some like Berkeley promo clip, and it was a shot of you in a classroom, just like little Adam Bentley, sitting and learning in like Studio E or something.
What? I got a
So
wow.
adorable, yeah. So
I was
that'll
just a pup, just a young pup.
that'll surface someday. Speaking of pups, maybe Toby will make an appearance eventually. But
Maybe he's snoozing right now.
oh, good boy. But yeah. So I guess maybe to tie this in a little bit to, or a lot of it to kind of like why we're here. We're also promoting the producer pack, the separated stems for all of you producer guitar people. I lean on the guitar people because I'm one of them, and I know you guys are definitely more interested than most about this stuff. For the retrospect EP that Adam mixed, so we'll check that out in just a bit. But I think one of the things I wanted to sort of chat about before we get too deep into that is like this whole process was pretty intense for me. It was like, I think this song especially was like over 200 tracks originally when I was like trying to squash things down to like actually send to you to make sense of stuff.
Yeah,
And
I can hear that. I can hear the depth that went into it for sure.
I know you guys have some crazy track counts too, so I want to ask you about that as well. But one of the big things that I came across in doing so was like sending stuff back and forth between you made me realize that like I should be treating these larger sections, especially like the orchestral stuff in the song, which just went off the rails, as much more like arms of the song rather than like this 100 track like thing that has to have all these different nuancy parts. Like really just be like, all right, if that had to all be collapsed to one fader that you could like bring in or out, and like does it add anything to the song? Like if that's like your focus, like what decisions would you make like around that stuff when it comes to like producing? So like
Yeah.
I'm wondering how you're approaching things when you get like a mix, because you're mixing is basically your full-time job, which we can also chat about a bit. When a band sends you like 100 plus tracks or like even crazier, like how do you parse that out at first?
Well, the first thing I think of is I really wish they don't do that.
Yeah.
Send things separate. It's not anyone's fault. I think a lot of the time, well, I'm glad you bring up yours, like committing to a stem, making a submix, for instance, of
Yeah.
like say orchestra or background vocal. I think usually when a producer is that deep in the weeds of it, like someone such as yourself, they're typically I had a brain fart there. They typically have an idea of what level they want, generally amongst them, the tracks. Whereas
Yeah.
if you just give them to me, I'm like, well, I'll do what I want, and hopefully, for some reason, I read their mind perfectly, and that's exactly what they want to hear. But then a lot of people don't. When I get it, like 100 tracks from a client, sometimes I have no idea. They'll be like, well, we want these to be audible in there, but maybe you mixing it will be the sort of revelation where we realize what's priority and what's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's
that
always a
was
foreground and a
huge for
background
me.
to a mix. So, and that's hard to nail. The more you track, that's always the thing. You got to be very careful. You wield a great power when you track 100 tracks or plus for a song.
Yeah, you're making it somebody's problem or your problem ultimately. But that was a really good point you made actually of our like bands trying to figure out like if they do have a really good idea or they don't. If they don't commit to something before sending it to you, you're gonna tell them what you think. And what that did for me was like it immediately highlighted the stuff that I wanted to have in the forefront because I didn't like realize it until it was missing. I'll be sitting at home like tweaking this one violin in relation to this cello, like a dB for like slaving over it for like 20 minutes, and it's like who
For sure.
freaking cares? And then you send the whole thing and it's entirely guitar leads and no strings or whatever, and I'm just like, oh, that's because this is what the rock mix should be, and what I'm looking for. I now realize, oh, okay, I can like actually articulate what I'm looking for.
That is how I like to mix for sure. I know people are all into the extra tracks that aren't actually being performed, for instance, and we are too as a band, Arch Echo. But I do when get a bunch of stuff, I do want it to be like the members first, and then sometimes that simply doesn't reflect what they want to hear, and I'll be like, I used to beat myself up a lot about that, like why didn't I read their minds? Why am I getting so many notes? But then it's just like simple as that, like you realize you're not a mind reader, so get over that. It's not that big
That's
a
actually
deal.
sick because the entire point of this EP, which we've mentioned in a couple of recent streams, was to bring all of the current members that are like the real players of the band. We don't have a conductor or anything like that. We just have a piano player in addition to like our core rock group. So yeah, your main focus on like the core elements of the band was actually welcome once we did that. It was just surprising to me, it being someone who's so like recluse and locked in his room making all these orchestra stuff sound amazing, that it's not like as important to the overall production. I think we sort of after a couple back and forths brought some of that up a little bit more, and we can sort of dive in and take a look at some of the stuff that's a little less audible in the mix. But I think what we landed on was ultimately perfect for like the message we're trying to put out there. We were getting a few comments about how like, oh, they got this like EP called Retrospect because they're trying to be like aesthetic, and thankfully some other fans are saying no, this is actually because they re-recorded some old songs. So
Yes.
yeah,
It has a purpose to the name.
you would not just say like, you know, Back to the Future or something cheesy or copywritten.
Dude, instrumental music. How do you come up with a name with a purpose? You know, unless it really speaks to the emotion of the song. But even then, emotion is up to interpretation for instrumental music.
Next music
so
video.
to give it a name, like, okay, shit. Let me think on that.
Yeah, no pressure, right? Let's see. So I will hop over to Pro Tools, and why don't we listen to some stuff, and then maybe we'll come back and chat about some stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Play me something.
Pro Twitch move transition activate. Here we go. All right, there we go. Now we should be looking at some Pro Tools stuff.
You nailed it.
Yeah, first try. Just had to work up the courage. So let's see. Real quick, first off, I actually put together a bit more than what is actually available in our producer pack. So what you're actually looking at on the screen here, we have a handful of color tracks. I apologize, Adam, if it's kind of glitching out on your end. But the colored tracks in this Pro Tools session are going to be the ones that are the mixed down stems that you get in this producer pack. All the separated tracks of like drums, vocals, layers and layers of guitars, samples and orchestration like we've been talking about. So you can isolate them, make cool play along tracks, remix stuff, whatever you like. But what I've also done is, thankfully, Pro Tools, again, the only DAW I know sort of just by default, thanks Berkeley, finally has folder tracks. So I've organized some of the pre-mix stems into folders with each one, so we can sort of bounce back and forth and dive into the layers a little bit more.
Man.
So what's was fun last time, I'm going to jump to the part where it has some actual drums in it, is we sort of A-B'd like where it started to where it began to how it's going.
Nice.
And sort of see where that ended up, so we can see like all the crazy work you ended up doing on your end. So without
you
further
did the
ado,
crazy work. Go for it.
Oh please, yes, more compliments. I need them. Let's bounce back and forth a little bit on this first section, and let's start with the full mix. And let me know in the chat, guys, how we're how the sound's going. Dude, that listening to like a million tracks like that back and forth between the actual mix and like where it started, it's like, to me, it's like turning on the like 8K monitor or like camera version, like onto like the 720p video that it started as, like, because like all the stuff is there, but classic
That
tracking syndrome where all your guitars have all the low end in the world because it feels fun to play and doesn't work in a mix at all.
that's always a thing though. Yeah.
Uh,
That bass tone is chunky from its birth. Though.
yeah,
That's a big takeaway.
yeah, that's been
That is
getting a
not
lot
my
of
scale chain.
yeah, a lot of traction on social is Werner's Dingwall tone, which is funny because for me, I'm looking forward to trying to experiment a bit more on new music, and sort of break out of what like the normal like mixed chains and tropes that we've been doing for a while. This record was a pretty close carbon copy to how we've been producing things through the light years and some of like our more recent like playthroughs. And thankfully we've been working with Werner for a few years now. I mean, he was on tour with us in 2017, but this is the first time he was on a record as a bass player. And we've done a few playthroughs, and so I've been like working with his Dingwall tones for a long time, and that was fun to play with, and definitely can akin a lot of my processing, and I'm sure you can too to some degree, depending on how much is deviated to like Nolly and producers of those critical acclaim.
Yeah, certainly.
So yeah, well, for bass tone real quick, specifically the FabFilter Saturn was the main one. FabFilter Saturn and Dingwall.
I'm assuming the DI is doing the heavy lifting because you hear that it's more of a character thing, like from the performance. I feel like
Actually,
anything after that's just butter.
it's just cherry on icing on the cake. Let's see, the DI.
It's cherry on the icing on the cake.
Yeah, at least you're using the proper mixed metaphor. I think I tried to put like a cherry on a sandwich the other day or something. So,
oh wow.
Yeah, let's see. What does this bass sound like? See, we still got a pretty chunky DI from the get go. I was gonna make a good pun, but didn't pan out. All right. And this is the original amp tone.
Yeah, that DI was meant for greatness.
Yeah. I don't know if you find this with because Werner's primarily a finger tone player, and one of the big things with I know we're getting sort of hyper focused on bass, but it's a quick, interesting topic.
Yeah,
Nolly's big thing with I think it was light gauge picks that have like sort of a natural tendency to sort of roll off that really transient thing that we're getting a lot of with the fingers here. Do you find yourself having to like deal with that a lot? I feel like you get a lot of Dingwall DIs in your time.
Oh, certainly, yeah. But if the finger picking is even, then that kind of is fulfilling the same goal, right, as the pick.
Oh yeah.
Like Joe Calderon in our band, him and Werner, I think those are the only two like strictly finger playing bassists where I'm like getting consistent, or I hear consistent performance out of it. It's so hard. I bet I can't even imagine getting your fingers to that level where it's like the DI sounds consistent.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of times I can fail miserably from people. I won't name names, of course, but it's hard to work with a DI where it's just not happening. But they seem to have the force and the consistency that a pick is trying to achieve. And I guess for us, a pick just seems like the easiest thing. It's more like we're familiar with it, and it's like a shortcut. So conceptually, it's like, just use a pick. Come on,
it just works. Why mess with it? Yeah, we tracked this in like 2019 when we were out there for NAMM, and I don't know if there's potentially a handful of sections on this that actually did use a pick. I know we did for a handful of parts in 90s, just because that was sort of the aesthetic. For a couple sections, like maybe the breakdown, we just said full tilt. Like, what's the most metal thing we can do with this bass? It's gonna probably be a pick. And it's pretty subtle once you run it through the wash of all this distortion and stuff. But to give Joe one more thing where credit is due, like that kid's tone is amazing, and consistency is just incredible. And like, I'm so glad that like, even though with switching from Dingwall, or from the what was it, the J bass rather, to Dingwall, yeah, he still got like that sound that isn't just like your typical Dingwall right out of the gate always.
Yeah, that scale length must feel. He said it felt great to switch to that with the fingers, to have that on the A string. Finger plucking a B string, the fifth string must be pretty shitty. Werner, if you're here, tell me how shitty that must be. Can I swear?
Oh yeah, totally.
I'm swearing.
Yeah, fucking swear all you want to for all the kids at home.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. So that's pretty awesome. Like having players like that and source material like that is pretty amazing. So, speaking of source material, to bounce around to everyone's favorite thing, I think when it comes to your productions, especially, if we can talk a little bit about some drum stuff.
Okay.
Why? This session was fun because James and I did this together in his old rehearsal space, which is not like the most ideally acoustically treated or like amazing room by any chance. It's just sort of a corridor with a tall ceiling and just like a bunch of stuff everywhere. And he's since moved to New York that has a much larger space that actually has some pretty cool sounds to it. So this one was pretty tight, and a lot of the space creation came from like reverb processing and very light sample augmentation and stuff like that. But this production was cool because James and I pretty much collectively agreed that we didn't want to spend a lot of time quantizing anything because we just didn't have the patience for it. So a lot of this performance is really just like sections lined up to downbeats where they really need to for like the sake of the production. Like I'm sure you find yourself doing a lot of this too, like when you just want like a downbeat to hit so everything pops on like that one altogether, even if it wasn't played that way, or if it needs to be a little sloppier because of the style, very much like a style of the production type thing. But
yeah, I am more like, I'm more of a wuss. I like to quantize as much as I can. And even if the drummer it could be just my OCD too. Like I see the grid there and I'm like, oh, I want to line it up. But you guys did a great job of playing. Like it seems really together, even though there is moments where like it feels like there's this sway, not in a bad way, but like on and off of the grid throughout the section. But it works. It works really well.
I was going to be able to demonstrate this, but I realized my tempo map isn't in here, so this is not on the grid just because it's not even in there. So, I mean, look how off the grid he is. Time, feel.
120 BPM.
120 BPM. So yeah, let's A/B some raw drums versus some mixed stuff, and just to give people a vibe. So here's what they ended up sounding like. And here I'll switch it to the raw ones as we get in. It's like, oh, where did my kick drum go? Yeah, man. Those are some.
A big thing is always like that lower mid thing. It always seems to be the case because like the kick and the snare being so like beefy.
Oh yeah,
like raw. You know what I mean? And it's gotta be perceived beef, but still make room for the other thing. That's the key. It's perceived beef.
I think that's the main thing I haven't outgrown in basically every mix that I do. It's like I'm not good enough at like getting the perceived beef. I'm just like, no, it needs to all be there. And then by the time it gets to my car, it's all just like, whoa. And
oh, we've all been through that.
Yeah. I would rather be anywhere but in my car at that moment. But this one is really cool because we sort of focused a lot more on the performance and getting like the best takes, especially because this is a re-recording of an old song. We didn't want to just do like the exact same parts, like note for note. So really the fastest way for us to, and like efficient way for James and I to like get our ideas out is to like just be in the same room together and say like, hey, this is what I was feeling for this section. I'm not going to like program it out because you're a drummer and you kind of know like what I want. So just like add some cymbals here or like do like a run here. And like, after just a couple takes, we figured out what we wanted, and didn't spend nearly as much time like focusing on like tuning every single drum to the exact thing, or like putting all these different mics in like grossly different positions than like what James normally has set up, because that's what's kind of cool about working with James. And I think Richie has a similar setup as well, where you just kind of have mics and drums ready to go pretty much whenever you need. So we ran with that, and a good example of that back and forth is actually right in the beginning here. I think it's this like Donkey Kong conga Tom moment. Like that was not in the original song at all, but just after like 2 playthroughs of like, should we have the snare on 2 and 4 or the snare on 3? And James was like, nah, I got this like this weird thing I was doing. Like, let me just try it again. And a lot of that stuff comes when he's just like almost hit something on one take, and I have no idea what he's talking about. But then the next time he does it, I'm just like, oh, well, that was perfect. Okay, done.
That's sweet, man. It fools you into thinking, at least from my perspective, that like the section is changing like overall, or like, you know what I mean, even though the riff is basically the same underneath or overneath over the drum,
wherever it actually is. Depends where your tracks are in relation. See, they're under. No, I'm curious actually for.
I like that a lot.
For Richie's stuff, having heard or being lucky to hear like some of your demos when we were trying to work out music videos beforehand, and then hearing like the final performances after, Richie definitely takes like as many cues as he can from like the ideas that you guys had before. And I think it's largely because like the ideas are so like well thought out and everything sort of has a purpose. Do you find on the recording day that he's like bringing a bunch of different ideas, or like even do you like behind the producer board or whatever saying like, oh, like let's try like something completely different? Yeah, the technical term for the mixing console.
Yeah. Well, it's been different every time. The first album he kind of just like improvised and just learned, but stuck to the, as you say, more purposeful hits. You know, like there's a lot of purpose in the performance, like when it's programmed in advance. But this EP, I didn't engineer. I let Julian do the engineering.
Oh, that's right.
I thought it'd be fun to. Well, they already have such a integrated setup, you know, at the machine shop. Like the way he mics and the way it patches into certain gear, that's like a thing that has to happen. And I really wanted to just roll with that and see what happened and get something different. So I was more just in the back seat, just being more of the guy that just watched and was like, "That's great. Let's do something different."
Hype man.
Cool. So yeah, it was more mixing, more post work for me. But I think I deviated from the question slightly. You were saying.
No, yeah, it's like it's sort of all related to that. Yeah, as far as like how like to a T does like he stay to like the performance. And
he practiced a lot this time on his own, and he like wrote a lot of parts, and he wrote sections on the album too, like of actual like music. So it's a way different approach than like when we first started. So it was very prepared. Yeah, he's very fast at tracking. He likes to come so prepared. I mean, we have time for ideas. He'll be a little flexible. He's like, let me try this. But that was only like a few instances of that. He'd be very confident in what he came in wanting to do. Like the drum solo on one of our songs on this new record. It's like, this is it. This is what I want to do on the solo. It's not like, give me 25 takes and let's pick the best one.
He's fast, idea-wise and physically. Because all your songs are fast.
He's a demon.
Speed demon. But yeah, let's see. I don't think there's anything else crazy going on with drums here.
It's all crazy. James is a beast. Come on.
Yeah, I credit where credit is due.
I was about to start just fanboying about this song, but continue. I don't want to talk over you.
No, well, that's really all I was gonna say. Was I get pretty desensitized, and I don't know if you do too. Just like being in this genre, and like for someone who like mixes all these crazy bands that are like finding you because of the next crazy band that you mixed or something, you're just like getting this amazing stuff, and it's like, yeah, it sounds fine, but like there's a little too much 4K here. Meanwhile, like if you're actually listening to it, you're like, holy crap, what is this dude actually playing? Like,
you got to keep that spirit for sure, or else you will lose your mind.
Was there any nerdy drum moments in this song that you particularly remember?
There's just the way he would place fills, like in the really heavy section. I don't know what to name the sections.
Nobody does.
I would just literally, I made markers that were just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because I was like, what is this? Like name wise. But like the way he would do fills to get into new sections, and like just the idea to do like the blast beat at the end of or getting out of the breakdown, just little things that would, you don't expect them. Whereas there's more of this drum programming centric thing going on in this genre where people don't really think about how to be unpredictable. You know, it's very creative, I guess. And there's things where like, oh wow, there's a lot of that moment where like, oh, okay, he just did that. Jeez.
I think that's where we're at right now with with new material that we've been teasing in a lot of our social posts recently, with people saying, hey, great new music video, when's the next thing coming? And thankfully we do have some music in the works, but it's very much in the stage where I desperately want to hear as many like real drum ideas on there to like actually make a section work, because a lot of the times that'll be what makes something that just doesn't flow like at all suddenly feel like a thing.
Work, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna one up you. I think it makes a whole entire song and band work as a real drummer. I feel like the industry hungers for that more now, like a real drummer with real ideas. It feels there's more than just even like programming akin to a drummer. It's like there's some element to it. Maybe I'm just an old guy that's like, people are doing it wrong.
No, well, for anyone who doesn't know, Adam is also a drummer. Is that fair to say?
Aspiring.
That's fair. It was only your principal instrument. Let's actually jump through this section a little bit. I want to highlight a couple spots and then we'll move on. So this is the heavy section. Has some fun stuff going on. There's just so many good like accents. It was interesting at first because watching him track to this, he was listening to the song and I had a much lower mix of the actual track in the background. So I was trying to sort of play it in my head and section by section sort of just kept going by and I was like, this is like a lot of stuff happening. Where are we? And then once I heard it much more in context, it was like, wait, he's like playing off of every little nuancey thing and then like makes it, like you were saying before, it feels like it's a developing section when the guitar is just going brown in and out for like 2 minutes. Oh,
Make us guitarists feel like we're contributing more.
Make us actually sound like we know what we're doing. Oh yeah, and then this that end part you mentioned. Whew. Thanks for putting like all the room sound on those the heavy stuff. I think that was like our one note for the drums was like big explosion in the heavy part, make it happen.
Yeah.
And you're like, I got this.
I do remember like I always tend to do that, and sometimes the first round I get very, cautious with it. And when James is like, go, you have my permission. up.
I think just like instinctually we sent you a drum sample to blend in with that snare to give it the beef that it needs, and our initial cadence is like, make it all 100% natural. It needs to be animal skin shells and personally built wood hoops and like
animal skin.
Yeah. But now like once we hear one mix and we're like, damn, it's already this far along, let's just give it the juice. And I think you did an excellent job with that.
Oh, thanks, man.
So
I mean, everybody has different opinions for sure, and I respect
they're all
them.
wrong.
They're all wrong except for mine. But no, I mean, the performance is still intact, is how I look at it. It's like it's still such a unreplicatable performance, and so I guess the samples, I never had that relationship with them. It's a negative relationship with them.
And I wish more people had that outlook. So that's a really awesome way to look at it.
Yeah. I think with that said, though, it was still mostly. Oh, just wrapping up that thought. I think it was still it was mainly natural, even just with that being said. Like, because I know there's that section, that very like chill section right after the strings and everything, where it's basically just him, and it sounds pretty close.
Oh, I actually wanted to. Where is that part?
samples come in.
And then you can hear it sneak in just at the
automated
end.
into the fill.
Oh, but dude, the stuff I struggle a lot with is like the nuancy sections, like those snare rolls. So the fact that you took the time to like make that marching snare sound like the way it should.
That's
Oh, so good.
Like what band? Like Haken. I've always liked Haken's mixes where like there's over a roll. I'm like, it sounds so snare bottomy. So I realized I just automate the attack, or like the 200 hertz, whatever.
Yeah,
There's always that peak. I just take a dip and like just destroy it right when a roll comes in. So I automated snare top, minus like 10 dB at whatever.
Yeah, that's Haken. That's a really good example actually, because I remember thinking about that. Like everything sounds so like clear when all these sections are happening, and I know that's not because they just have one like make the snare sound good setting. It has to be because you got to change things when it's needed. Also, I remember, so real quick to skip to guitar stuff before we run out of time here. This song and the previous song, I'm very, very similar tones, I'm assuming, because I used basically the same cab sound and processing for the most part. But the 90s Nine Ties version was all run through the Axe effects. And this one was entirely Nolly, Neural DSP, Nolly archetype, that's the word. Which was super fun to mess with. Also because it made tracking with Eric much, much easier on all these long sections rather than having to like go back and commit to reamping some stuff with an Axe effects. So still have my Axe effects, but if anything, this proves that like the plugins are here.
Yeah, it sounds similar enough to me. Jeez. So
I think the cool thing that I wanted to mention with in relation to guitar stuff, this is not the beginning. This is intro section. I tried my best to rip off some of the production elements that Nolly was going for in his announcement video for that plugin, actually. I thought it was so cool that he had this production of basically power chords panned and blended with 2 more guitars, so 4 guitars, playing like extensions of that chord on top to like blend together and create this like larger than life thing. I think ours is a bit more dense, so it's kind of harder to get that as much clarity, but it was fun experimenting with that sound. So here's like the first like 5 or 10 seconds of this song. So that little like added. So even there, I mentioned the guitarist of Exvius earlier before we started here. That was very much like a jazz cynic chord blend in there, but this thing, I'm pretty sure that's 4 tracks because some of them got collapsed when I was bouncing them out for you, so that we could get like extensions on top of just like a low single note. But
I appreciate you doing that.
wherever I can. Ooh, actually, there's a very quiet layer under here. So this was that clean chord. That sounds so corny by itself. It's like major. Let's see.
You have like a secret Aviations IR or something that you use?
Oh yeah, it's one of. You're gonna laugh at me. It's either the same one or it's a slight alteration of, when Axe FX firmware updates would come and you get like a zip file and they give you like the firmware and then like 8 IRs or something that are like pro IRs or something, and you're supposed to like throw them in. It was one of those.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And I figured out which speaker was. It's an own hammer. It's like a high watt speaker or something, and now I'm like obsessed with finding that speaker someday and just to find out that it sounds nothing like it.
Probably.
It's like what does it matter at all? But that's a fun one. It's something we might deviate from for some new music, because we use this for the light years as well, but really, really stoked on where this ended up. I'm curious what these quieter layers are. So that's just blended underneath. So you blend that with, we're getting into that territory where it's like it's like perceived stuff. It's like so subtle at that point.
Production.
See those the jazz chords? Like throwing that on top of, it's like, it's just barely there, and just mostly to tickle my music nerd. Harmony has to have every single layer in
really
there.
in tune. Yeah.
Took a lot of
the
time.
tuning. Oh yeah, that must have been time consuming.
With this guitar, which I have the trem still blocked with a a dongle for a wireless mouse, because that was the only thing I could find that fits.
Oh, what, dude?
Right? Eventually I'll get that actually set up for proper recording, but
This wasn't a proper recording.
this wasn't a proper recording. This was like, Sam, the song's due tomorrow, you have to do this. And that might happen again, full disclosure. But yeah, man, the tuning is a big thing we try to pay attention to. And actually with this, Eric will have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think we might have recorded some sections where we like played each other's guitars if like, you know, it fit the part or whatever. He had one of those, or still has, sorry, one of those Iron Label 7 strings, and some of the split coil settings on that sound really, really cool. To jump real quick to the jaunt section. We have this quad tracked thing going on, and for whatever reason, that was something I had in like a demo for this song for a while, and I think that track might have even, oh no, sorry, we changed the tempo, so I replayed it, but I had to use, for the lower gain sounds, the axe effects for some reason, because I just had it dialed in. So main tone ended up being Nolly, but there was a couple moments where like the axe effects kind of came back, like and you want to know how I know it's the axe effects? Because of all that noise. Isn't that funny?
This is an ad for Fractal Audio.
Yes, it gives you that vintage digital noise that you want in all your guitar takes, But yeah, everything is pretty much baked into this one guitar track. As far as like what you get in the producer pack, I might consider, you know, putting these out if it's like more of an educational thing at some other time, but we'll come back to that. We'll keep it simple for the producer pack now. And let's see what else we got going on here. Oh yeah, the quote unquote heavy guitars, which was just basically the setting in Nolly with the gain turned all the way up for the breakdown. Was just like, I'm like, well, it's got to be heavy. Don't really have any more ideas how to make it heavy. So let's just do that. And this is what ended up happening. And had to do a little nod to Gojira.
Really interesting. It's weird where like the presence sits. It like worked out with the bass, I think. I don't know how to just, where the mid range is focused on your IR, I guess. And you could push more gain into it, it sounds like, than like the stock IR.
Yeah, like, I mean,
maybe it's just me nerding out.
It's like still pretty boomy for what it is, and I'm curious what I actually did. I'm not sure if I quad tracked this just with the same setting or if it's a slightly different pickup, but there's just so much gain. But yeah, to what you're saying about like it's sitting with the bass, Werner and I have been like sharing tracks back and forth for a few years now, so like out of laziness I've been sitting with this IR essentially and basically dialing in those two to work together for a while. So I think when it came to this, I wasn't working as hard to make them sit where they needed to be, and then I was very thankful that you put them like exactly where they needed to be as far as like, you know, that perceived boom stuff that we were talking about before.
I gotta make a t-shirt, man.
Fix your perceived boom stuff.
Perceived beef, just a picture of a cow, yeah, or something.
Yes.
That's not lame.
We got some awesome merch ideas in here right now. Let's see real quick at the end. What's going on here? So that ended up being, yeah, that was 6 guitars. Why,
The
Sam?
semitones.
It's like semitones and stuff, yeah. And this freaking silly stuff. Oh, that's what it was. So I tracked both sides, or Eric and I tracked both sides opposite each other, each double tracked. And then I figured out how to do this silly lick in octaves on the guitar. So I was able to just like add that texture rather than like the chunky minor second chords or whatever you got there. Octaves,
Whatever he
such
did
a fun
helps.
way.
Yeah.
So that's basically Sam's tips and tricks for guitars. Just add as many layers as possible, and Adam Bentley will figure it out.
The game.
Let's see. Last guitar thing for cleans was the Dream Theater ripoff I was trying to go for in this guy, and you can pick these apart in the producer pack as well. Petrucci piezo pickup, clean stuff mixed with actual acoustic guitar, like is like my new favorite thing from this song and for Outliers. And let's see how it sounds on this guy. So if anyone's familiar with The Count of Tuscany by Dream Theater, it's basically that song.
That's great, man. I like that intercoil. Is it split intercoil clean tone or something?
Yeah, so let's see if I have it right.
That's my favorite, like clean tone for sure.
This guy?
Yeah, the way the attack is like it's rounded. I don't know. There's something cool about it.
It's that chimey thing. It's almost too much for some stuff, but I love, and obviously because I was ripping off Petrucci stuff, but I love how that fits in with acoustic guitar, like because the acoustic fills in all these other like spots and makes it bright. But yeah, just very, very nice stuff.
Good work, sir.
And now to get into the meat of the stuff that is not always as audible, our main new addition, as of this recording at least, in full force, our piano player Richard, who made, I think what he would like essentially assume like a guest appearance on our last album. We recorded a bunch of sections with a much less of a piano focus, because that was not really where our heads were at composition wise. And now having a full-on piano player in the band, like you guys have Joey, like, and Joey of course like jumps around and does a whole slew of sounds and production stuff as well, but having someone to actually be the face of that like leg of your band, I think is really huge. And we've been getting a lot of comments about the piano playing itself as well. So let's try and grab a piano section here. And Richard will have to correct me if I'm wrong, or remind me which piano he actually recorded this on. I think it was his the Steinway that he has at his work. So they actually have that low string, because the upright he has in his house, because yes, he does have a piano full on baby grand in his house. It's not quite long enough for like the low stuff that he wants, and that's gonna be a sound that we keep messing with.
Killing it.
I don't know if you've had to quantize piano stuff much, but like for me it's very, very difficult, so I just didn't bother. And thankfully for this stuff, there's only like one or two sections where Richard and I were playing like simultaneous things, unison lines, which we did a lot more on our last record. And this time he actually wrote that section for this song, and because of that was able to just sort of float in between all the different sections without me having to get an anxiety attack about things must be on the grid. So this is just like super cool all around.
Yeah, the sound is great too of the piano, or like, I don't know, I'm sure it's him, but also just like the harmonics. I feel like you can get away with it being with the guitars. In theory, a piano, it sounds like a nightmare with high gain guitars.
Yeah.
High gain guitars are brutal, man.
I don't know if you remember or who said it. The Dingwall piano comparison. It almost has like a. That might have been something Ollie said. Actually, has like Dingwalls can sometimes have like a piano like
this. Oh yeah.
As far as like the low stuff
scale
goes,
length thing.
Yeah. It's like a richness thing.
It's always a concern. Well, it's really cool that he like stuck to his guns and played a piano,
yeah,
from start to finish, and didn't like reach for like 100 MIDI sounds. But it just seemed appropriate, like for this vibe.
Yep. And while he was doing stuff that was totally appropriate, I was in Cubase learning how to do a million things that were totally inappropriate, such as all these string patches and pads and stuff. Let's see what's going on there.
Yeah, strings sound great.
So this was my first, or actually first foray into using, I mentioned this on our last stream, but the Spitfire chamber strings, which is like a much smaller section. And I think Misha's talked about them a bunch on some of his like film scoring live stream stuff, and that was enough for me to want to pick this one up because I knew I was going to use it all over these recordings. So what's actually...
Is that the same strings as the in the middle? Do you use the same VST?
I believe so. Where is that section? This is the soloed one, right? Yeah. It's like only strings. Here, let's do the scary stuff into that. On the flip side of that is Spitfire Uist, which like the entire purpose of that was to get like terrifying sounds. So I combined like a bunch of scary stuff from chamber strings with these like weird sounds.
Hell yeah, dude. That elevated that section. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. And then these were just like layers upon layers of stuff. This is also like, I think, combined stems of things, but lots of different stuff. Albion, chamber waves from lots of Spitfire stuff. Maybe a handful of Burling strings in there as well. But this whole section, when all said and done, was just like, okay, I have this interlude and I want it to sound this way. Do this, just clean up my low end and make everything make sense. So I thank you for that, but let's hear what this actually sounds like by these separated parts. I'm curious.
I probably did the least to this out of any track.
Let's see, this strings 2. This sounds like just chamber orchestra. Has a lot of the melody. So I believe that is actually Albion Tundra, which is a much like softer orchestra, like woodwinds and strings and stuff, just playing like as softly as they possibly can. So there's really like no attack. It's just kind of like a wash of stuff to like fill out the like really articulate string stuff of, because like that sounds like a group of like 8 or so people or whatever. And then I think there's one more big chunky one. Might also be Tundra, just a different strain of it. That's what it is. The Tundra and a lot of the Spitfire stuff that is more ensemble based for writing, it's really helpful, and for this, it's really helpful. They separate them into the higher and lower registers. So one of those is higher and one of those is lower.
I'm gonna have to pick this up.
Yeah. And then the last secret thing in there is the Hans Zimmer moment.
Oh, of course.
Which I in one of Joe's breakdowns, I think, if I'm remembering right, it was I think it was a YouTube video for an Arch Echo song. There was a bunch more like strings and brass stuff going on than I originally noticed, and it just goes to show how much of this gets like buried.
That's my fault, dude. Getting buried.
Yeah. With Joey's thing, he's like, "You're just gonna destroy my low mids. Take them all."
It's always like a timbre thing, you know how it goes. If you take it away, it's like there's a huge drop off in energy, but it's not because you like specifically heard the horn.
Yeah, exactly.
In F sharp, you know.
Only in F sharp.
And we've been doing. I mean, it looks like you did it there. I like horns being a cue. I think a lot of things people do, or a common thing someone does is like, I want horns to exist here, so they just make a wall of horn from start to beginning.
Like all ensemble figures,
or start to end of the section.
Yeah,
yeah. Or Joey put it in a good way, where it's like kind of picture a conductor queuing up a horn for like an important motif, you know.
Yeah.
Because if that's really what the goal of the horn is for the section, like it has its one moment, just program that one moment, and that's it.
No, otherwise, double everything.
Yes, 1,000 people.
Yeah, unless you're was it John Williams with the 70-80 person orchestra, and that's your deal. Yeah. Then go for it.
Well, thankfully he doesn't have high gain guitars playing over him.
Not yet. Maybe he just hasn't had the right project. Last thing I'll plug in this section, as far as like sample libraries go, which I think you should totally check out. It's something my brother got me for like Christmas a couple years ago. This little company. Oh yeah, Misha's also talked about this too. This company, Finishing Move, and the plugin is called Posthuman. There we go. And it's essentially like 4 different sound design engines that just like organically like blend over each other a bunch, so it sounds like something that's kind of constantly evolving and developing, but you can play notes. So you can sort of add like just this weird motion to like pretty much anything. So I believe that's what this track is now that I've queued it out. It takes so long for the chord to change.
I like it.
Basically sounds like you spent hours and hours.
Like a Rivendell kind of vibe.
We're chilling with the elves. So like stuff like that, and I Spitfire also makes, not like this is an ad for Spitfire, but they also have some similar libraries that are evolving textures like that. But that's like a great way if you have like a handful of like cues like you mentioned, or just chords plunked out into string libraries that sound pretty good, and you want to make it sound much more without doing a lot of work. Find some libraries that like have this like kind of motion to them and just like tuck it in under, and then suddenly it'll be like, oh wow, there's so much sound design going on. Makes it sound like it did absolutely nothing, but which is kind of true. So that one's a fun one. Yes. What is this track called? Synth Leads. That's like, so when you do a song that has like 200 tracks and then you bring them down, you forget what all this junk is.
Oh, I remember.
So good. And I think the only reason that was there was just to jokingly support what Richard was already doing. And for those of you who have a Richard or a Joey Izzo that can play pretty much anything you throw in front of them, use that tool carefully, because they will play the thing if you tell them to. So this was a arpeggio thing that I like plunked out on a keyboard at one point, and Richard was like, I could make this, make more sense, but I guess we'll just play it. And the fact that he can just like do it first try is like insane. So again, we wield a very dangerous power when we play with musicians this good.
Yeah, indeed.
And the biggest orchestra section that I've been like dying to show everybody is the actual outro. That has all of these different layers and ends up sounding like, I don't know, a Hans Zimmer / Danny Elfman movie at this point, with all this stuff. And I'm glad you brought all, like, again, the band figures to the forefront for this song, because it's super long. But we still want to make it seem like it is a band with this like film score aesthetic. I'm not sure where we'll go with this with the music, but getting this under there and to actually like still be somewhat audible was like big for me. And then, sorry. Yes. And man, when you get a nice sample library with a nice portamento, like
I was gonna say portamento.
you try not to use it all the time. It's like it's kind of like drum samples.
I love that you
and
dropped
hot
out the
sauce.
low chords on the downbeat. I think that was where the downbeat was, where like the chords is supposed to be chunky and big. Song's over. You like drop out your low voicings on the strings.
And then brought it back in. Oof. Yeah, man. Like I'm gonna assume that was something I intended to do and not an accident. We're gonna go with that.
That makes me sound smart.
No,
You're smart,
what's
man.
fun about that, and I think about this every time now, is I had classes at Berkeley where I would write a composition and it would end on a chord with a sharp 11 or some sort of Lydian thing, and it's like that's not tonal harmony.
It's not correct. Tonal. That's not 300-year-old music.
Exactly. So now I just stick it to it and I'm just like, you know what? Give you just the full-on tension. It's like the only note you get, and they can suck it. Because we're making music for now. That's not 300 years old.
Exactly.
But yeah.
I tried my best to it does become this big wall of mids for sure, but I do remember gutting the guitars pretty hard there. So like what you're hearing in terms of the mids richness and stuff is from that, or at least I tried my best to make that.
Yeah, that's
be the
crazy.
case.
Because like this is a good example of
It's
where
pretty
like
rock solid. Like,
yeah,
you know, it can take the place of a guitar.
that's a really good point actually. And I haven't thought about like, I don't know, saturating a string section enough to where like it maybe like pretty much sounds like guitars at that point. But this is like a really good example of something conceptually I want all these layers to be in there, but functionally metal is already like a collection of a bunch of like noisy things that shouldn't exist. And we're trying to make them work. So the fact that this got anywhere near where it actually ended up being is amazing. So I applaud you for that. In addition to all the
let's do a remix, but just no high gain guitars.
that'd be the was the Flushcott Apocalypse or orchestral remix.
Oh yeah.
And just a bunch of timpanis and stuff too. There you go. And that's how you tie together an
Sweet.
Aviations production is strings and timpanis. And Adam Bentley will make it work.
I try.
Bah.
Bah.
So, for any of you that are still hanging with us, this is everything and more that you get in the producer pack, as well as the guitar tabs for both songs, and those should be going up on our Bandcamp by sometime tomorrow, I believe. I'll have to double check. I'm not on our Bandcamp right now to double check that,
Sweet.
but it's okay.
It's worth it.
It's worth it.
Buy
the things.
Buy.
It's so fun. This is yeah. Take our money and buy. No. So it's fun. I'm still getting used to running these technically and as a host. Let's bounce away from Pro Tools. I think we've beaten this dead horse enough.
Sounds good, man. I hate the sight of that DAW.
It's true. Because Adam's a Studio One boy.
Yeah, man. I'd go to Logic if Studio One went out of business, PreSonus or whatever. I'll go to Logic, and then if Apple goes out of business, I'll go to Cubase.
Because you'll have to get a Windows machine at that point. Haven't had good luck with those, unfortunately.
Indeed.
Someday I will, though. But yeah, so aside from dealing with our total nightmare of a production, like, what else do you have going on at the moment? Any fun releases coming up soon that you can talk about, or maybe that have just come out?
There is one that comes to mind because, well, he did make an announcement. There's a ton of stuff that haven't had like official sort of word. Yeah. But do you know Thrill Kill by any chance? Have you heard of that? He is an incredible, I mean, right now he's solo, but he is basically a band when touring is actually allowed to happen again. But yeah, he has an album coming out. I think he announced it's like going to be like early next month. And I love it, dude. Like, it's one of the rare things where I can listen to it like all the time, even though I actually worked on it. But I love that guy's music. So check him out if you like prog. I bet people like prog that are
if you don't, then why are you here? Yeah, let's evaluate your life choices.
But yeah, I'm not just gonna list off a bunch of stuff. That's it's definitely a fun one that will be out like very soon. But yeah, just mixing has just been my thing, as you said, just full time, and love it.
That's sick.
And our Checo stuff. We got a video being filmed for our Checo.
I was gonna ask about that
very soon. And oh wait, you're involved.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my gosh.
What?
I'm really looking forward to that. Always love having you, man. It's great.
Yeah, for anyone who didn't pick up on the last video they did together, the world state is pretty crazy, so everyone getting together in the same room is pretty difficult, and we were able to pull that one off entirely remotely with some help from some very good visual effects artists. So we're looking to do something similar.
Great, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you film that video like before COVID or?
With Joey's parts?
Oh, I'm talking about your video now.
Yeah. This is about me now. Yeah, so the Aviations video was before, but it was in the same mindset as what everyone's going through right now. We filmed it all in one house, basically. That's how we were able to get a grand piano into all these different shots. We had to dress the set to be the same as like a bunch of other things. So what everyone else sees as us like playing guitar in space, doing all this fun shit, we're like sweating our asses off in a 7-foot high garage in the middle of summer in Tennessee.
Wow, dude.
Memories. So
that's beautiful.
Make music videos. Adam knows how fun they are. It's not tiring or exhausting at all. You don't have to play the same song 10 times.
And the post, man. I can't even imagine what the post endeavors are like.
Yeah, but this next one's gonna be fun. I think it's not gonna be super over the top. It's gonna be just very, very clean and focused on you guys as players again, and like just really heightening that aesthetic, like I was talking about before. Like being an Archeco fan is seeing you guys just like destroy your instruments in the best way possible. So the more we can get that on camera. Yes. Not a good word to use for all your endorsements, but yeah.
Oh, of course. But with that said, I do want something like an anime thing. I want something like weird next time for sure.
Yeah.
Like for the next album, just some random like animation, or even just anime versions of us doing something. I don't know.
That'd be sick.
We still need to figure it out, but yeah.
Animated anime adventure.
Play all together. It's fun that definitely just pretend we're all playing together, even though we're not.
Yeah, I feel like that's what we end up doing a lot in videos when we're all together anyway. Because usually it's kind of hard to fit everyone all together. So that's a goal of mine too, and I want that for you guys someday too. Actually, did you have it at all in your Hit Tipper video? I'm trying to remember if there was any like full band.
There was, but we just scrapped it because it looked really clunky.
Right.
It's really hard to nail those. I think that's why green screen's more the way to go now. Like you said, like people can all be together and they'll still just green screen it one at a time. Give the editor some freedom.
Yeah. So we'll get that figured out someday. But for now, I think I've destroyed your ears enough for this and for our viewers at home. I'm not sure if anyone else is still even hanging out with us. If you've hung out for this long, thanks for checking us out. Adam Bentley, it was super cool of him to come on here and pick through his work, which I'm sure he was sick enough of hearing after working on it for so long. Nah, I'm just fishing for compliments.
Good song. Good song.
So let's see. Well, almost ruined the thing. So, dude, thanks for hanging. I'm gonna transition out of here, and
my pleasure.
We'll talk soon.